We recently talked about player housing, bringing all these cities back. Why is Blizzard doing this? To me, I started to believe it was hinting at maybe player housing coming in. Evidently, Doran's on the same mind track here. Big evidence for race-specific player housing coming. Let's see what Doran has to say about this.
Have you noticed that Blizzard has been going crazy double time and settling all the playable races, and it seems to be set to finish prior to midnight? Gilneas return, Undercity return, Bellamet, there are hints of the Draenei getting a new city, Trolls, there are hints of Goblins getting Undermined in the War Within, and of course, Quel'Thalas in midnight with the Elven...
Yeah, I mean, any elf that doesn't have a proper city right now, Quel'Thalas, I think, is going to become their hub city. We talk about like Void Elves or something, you know, where they don't have a real proper city, or even High Elves. High Elves, obviously, their city was Silvermoon. I think that's part of why this city, Silvermoon, is not going to become the hub city for all elves. And player housing might have something to do with it.
Reunion. We got warbands that seems to be a setup for making your characters actually feel alive. Now, imagine player housing, but that is not garrisons with orcs and human buildings where there is really an illusion of customization and nothing to actually do. No, these specific buildings, your alts living there like with the warbands, you choosing a plot of land in Undermine or Quel'Thalas or Durotar, all tied into the story, making the house actually feel alive. In an interview, Blizzard has promised us features at midnight that will blow our socks off, that will be announced right at the 20th anniversary.
Yeah, they did. The blow your socks off comment, I remember, did come from Ian Hazacostas, and I would say player housing would certainly blow the community's socks off and blow some other things because people have really been wanting it. That's
wow. And what features would better be suited for this anniversary than giving a home to the characters that have been wandering and fighting on Azeroth for over 20 years? Let's look at all the actual big hints of how Blizzard has been setting up player housing to come in midnight. If you want to get Dragonfight or anything else Warcraft related, Gamio has some excellent deals that you can check out with my link below. Best of all, you can get software, gift cards, a bunch of games at below market prices. On top of that, you can also use my code Doran to get yet another discount, so make sure to check out my link below and grab some amazing deals at Gamio.
Helping us out.
Player housing has been one of those features that people have been requesting pretty much since forever. In multiple interviews, Blizzard mentioned they had considered it, and not just considered it, I mean they already attempted to do it, which was Garrisons, but it didn't really live up to being actual.
Were Garrisons really an attempt at player housing? I mean, player housing, really the reason why people want it is like customization and stuff. That's what people love about player housing. If they did implement player housing, it was just this cookie cutter, you can't do anything or change anything about it, nobody would like it. Player housing is a customization option, a collector's kind of dream, you know, where they can collect things and put things in certain places and show off achievements, maybe hang a boss's head on a wall or something. That's why people want player housing. This certainly is not. And this was it never created any options for anything. It was just a cookie cutter thing where, you know, it did its stuff. And another thing about Garrisons, the failure of Garrisons, they did way too much. You can't have a player housing that essentially eliminates the need for any city whatsoever. You can't have banks. You can't have the ability to make a ton of money in your player house. You can't have the ability to basically just cut off the rest of the world and just sit in your house all day. That's a bad thing. And that's what Garrisons did.
Player housing. I mean, all those mission tables and order calls we've been getting over the past few years.
What would happen to Moonguard if they opened player housing?
I wonder. Derivatives of player housing, but obviously Garrisons was the biggest attempt, and this was really as far as WoW had gotten up to this point. The issue was that it completely isolated you. It really wasn't all that exciting. Yeah. It got boring really fast. It was not really that well developed, as you only had a few slots. You could customize a few buildings, a few decorations, but practically everyone had the exact same garrison in the exact same space, and it wasn't even really race specific. It was either orc or human with a few building customizations.
True.
And of course, most importantly, it was on an alien planet in an alternate time traveling timeline. It wasn't exactly home sweet home. Now, here is the main thing why it really failed. Player housing, in all actuality, is a massive feature by definition if you really want to do it right. It requires a ton of models, a ton of customization, race-specific buildings, systems, lore,
assets on top of assets. If they do player housing correctly, they would need freaking hundreds of assets because it needs to be highly customizable.
to win it the story, it really is an endeavor close to the scale of World Revamp.
Also give us a
Hearthstone.
Hearthstone.
Exactly why I think we may actually be onto something here, as we can really trace what Blizzard has been doing these past few years. I'm not just speculating here without substance. We got about 3 massive hints, and it really seems like Blizzard understood that in order to do player housing properly, you need to devote a ton of effort, which is why they started setting the ground for this all the way in the Shadowlands throughout Dragonflight. They're adding some prerequisite features in the War Within, and ultimately player housing is probably going to come in WoW Midnight. Let's start off with the big and the main news. Have you noticed that
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be the War Within, that's for sure, because that would be a feature. It's a box feature, man. And when I say box feature, I mean when you used to buy the game, you know, and you'd open the little flap. Man, I miss that. I'm not going to lie. I miss that stuff. When you'd open the little flap and you see, like, the major features that are listed, because those are the things, those are the reasons that you're supposedly spending your money on this game. Don't forget, a box feature of, I think, Wrath of the Lich King was mounted combat. Yeah, I don't even know how that shipped out ever, but that never happened, obviously. But you could, you would see this on the box. So they would have already told us for the War Within for sure that we would have had this feature. Could be a midnight feature. Yeah, I could see that.
It has been going absolutely hard, and I mean,
really it would definitely player housing would facilitate a lot of new professions. That's for sure, Deadric.
Each playable race their own capitals, which in itself would be a prerequisite to make it something worth playing. The thing is, though, we got about a dozen or so playable races, which creates a big problem, and making new capitals, new buildings, all this new lore literally wouldn't make sense if they just announced it all of a sudden. I mean, just imagine if on BlizzCon they announced, yeah, like 10 different races are building their own city overnight. Because of this, they started setting the ground near the end of Shadowlands, and we got so many things going on at once, even now in Dragonflight and also in the War Within. First of all, the Undead got their capital back, with them proclaiming a new Lord on their new insignia, clearing up loose ends and getting a new identity. Then the Vorgen had just received their kingdom back after spending so many years in exile, and they seem to be slowly rebuilding until midnight. Most important, of course, the entire patch of Dragonflight was...
Yeah, we got the whole thing, about the elves, we got their city back too. That's great. Yeah, but the thing is, the reason why I started to believe this whole player housing rumor, and I'm not a player housing Andy. I don't really care that much about it. But I would say that once I started to see all these cities popping up, I started to think, hey, maybe this player housing has some legs. Because at the end of the day, all these cities are really, they're ghost towns. I mean, let's call them what they are. They're ghost towns. Nobody's going to sit there and spend time and actually use the city as a city. Because there's no true features that are there that, Stormwind and Orgrimmar have everything you need, essentially. There's no portal hubs here. There's no bank here. There's no auction house here. So why would they do this? Why would they put so many assets into the game? And by the way, there are a lot of assets in these cities, and not have any reason for it. Well, I think the reason is player housing. That makes sense to me now. And it would create cities that are no longer ghost towns, because people would have their houses in all these different cities.
Belamed, the Night Elves building a new World 3, a new home.
They do need to add portal hubs to every city, I agree. The thing is, your player housing could solve that problem, because if you got a Hearthstone, maybe you could have a small portal room that takes you to Stormwind or Orgrimmar or something.
Just the start. Of course, we know the Blood Elves are getting their kingdom restructured, and we're getting a new Silver Moon, and not just Blood Elves, but they're going to be bunching up all the elves here with the Elven Reunion team they had announced, which is how they're going to be dealing with the Void Elves as well. Now, all these things that I just mentioned have happened or are confirmed to happen. However, we had recently data mined an absolute ton of new models for 10.2.7 questline, where it seems like the Draenei are building a new capital, something potentially akin to Ockenden. It, of course, makes sense. I mean, we dealt with their loose ends all the way.
Draenei are going to city back.
Of course, no going back to Argus nor Draenor, so really their new planet is Azeroth, where they will settle permanently. So it makes zero sense why they're still living in a fortified camp in the ruins of a spaceship, like the crash of a spaceship. Together with them in 10.2.7.
Man, Exodar got to be one of the worst cities in the game. I can't remember the last time I went back to Exodar. Holy crap, that is really a ghost town.
And of course, we don't really have as much information here, but there are hints of the trolls settling as well, in particular the Darkspear. They already kind of have a settlement on the Echoes, but really this is an area that is so
some
stuck
huts and
in
some
time,
sticks.
and it sorely needs an update, and it could easily be done as well, as the Isles are already there, that you could just update the storyline. Furthermore, we are getting books on the Isles of Kultiras, Zandalar, which is further laying the foundation for Midnight, as well as these books are coming out in only a few months. Now, interesting enough, if you guys have followed the news, you might have seen the new short stories in that Gazo will apparently be a main character in the War Within.
Right.
He's apparently helping to revive a struggling goblin city, and we know
part of what's probably going to bring Undermine back. I do think the goblins are going to get their city back. That's seeming more
the
likely.
Goblin capital is still active, it is underground, it is related to World Soul, Azerite, it is geographically super close to the location of Kazakhstan itself, so it is highly likely that the goblins will be getting a capital in a patch like 11.1. Now, you may be thinking, but what about the gnomes and the Pandaren? Unfortunately,
yeah, for the gnomes, I mean, leper gnomes are a problem we'll never be able to solve. Yeah, I've said it before. We defeated the Legion. We've defeated the denizens of death in the Shadowlands. And many others, the Shaws in Pandaria, but leper gnomes, it's a tough one, guys. I don't think we'll ever beat them. So gnomes are out of luck. No city for you.
The gnomes, I really have no answers. We have no hints yet, but I'm guessing there might be a questline in the War Within about it. As
Gnomeregan would be cool if they ever did bring it back.
It just needs to be cleared out. But in regards to the Pandaren, I mean, something could be happening. We are very likely going to Pandaria in 10.2.7, and interestingly enough,
you're probably right,
was
Deandre.
recently released only a few months back on the current status of Pandaria and all the things that he changed over the years. I'm not, of course, saying we're getting a new capital on Pandaria, but they had surprisingly enough gone through a lot of effort in order to tie loose ends and to give us updates on this continent post Myths of Pandaria, so there has been an effort there as well. Now, when you really take all of this into account, is it not suspicious at all that all of a sudden, in the span of like 2 years, they decided to update and give homes to like 8 different playable races?
Yeah, it is
I don't
suspicious.
think it is outrageous to say that this could be a part of the upcoming player housing project that could be cooking in the background. Now, that is of course not all the hints. The reason I'm saying it might happen at midnight is because Blizzard themselves strongly hinted at something big happening in an interview right after BlizzCon. They were asked, is there concern that player excitement and surprise will be tampered with the announcement of the next 3 expansions at once? And they replied to this, there is still so much more to dive in and to announce with each expansion that should help keep players engaged, including a strong cohesive narrative. Features in...
Oh my god, this is it. Features in Midnight are expected to blow your socks off. Yeah, player housing.
Midnight are expected to blow the players' socks
I'm really thinking more and more that
this
this
type
is the
of grandiose statement strongly hints they are in fact planning something big, like some massive project. Like, it's probably not just going to be a new class, but very likely something that players have been requesting since forever. And to me, the first thing that comes to mind is either a world revamp or player housing. A world revamp is already happening, but gradually that is essentially confirmed, and
because
there
it's a
are
place
really
to take
not
your
many
socks off.
other features that could blow the players' socks off. Furthermore, it seems like most people are really excited for Midnight and the Last Titan. War Within just kind of seems to be setting up the features, just starting to get the ball rolling.
Yeah, War Within feels like a setup.
Why I think this project is going to continue throughout the War Within, like this preparation thing. Of course, while we're talking about the War Within, there is one feature that also seems like a prerequisite for advanced player housing, and that is, of course, warbands. Warbands in itself is not exactly some giant, huge feature. In fact, a lot of people said they should have been done ages ago, but when you think about it, it really seems very closely tied to player housing, like a precursor to it. As I said, player housing, in order to be exciting, to get people excited, to be good, needs to be really well developed. It can't just be garrisons where you got orc and human buildings, a few customizations, and you can put this building here instead of the other one. No. It needs to tie in the story, it needs to be advanced, and most importantly, as with all the races getting their capital, it needs to be like a crowning event where our characters finally, after 20 years of fighting, being essentially murder hobos, we get our own place in the world that is going to be like the highlight of our achievements. In fact, that is yet
that looks beautiful. So, like, Dry Night architecture, I do like. I'm not gonna lie, it does look nice. And the exit art just needs to go. They need a proper city.
That is yet another argument why this could happen at
Imagine
Midnight.
you're all just walking around in your house.
Midnight will be announced on BlizzCon this year, right around the time of the 20th anniversary.
If you're all walking around,
World of
could totally have it.
Now, think about what the warbands really are. It groups up all your character in one screen. It gives you an account-wide bank with delves. You will also have these NPCs you interact with. I'm not saying, warbands is player housing, but it is like one of the building blocks.
It's like a
for
prerequisite,
it to happen.
kinda.
Now, with this done, imagine what player housing could actually be like. First of all, you can choose your house based on your race, with each race having unique buildings, but you can kind of mix and match if you want to. You can settle on a plot of land in Gilneas or Quotalas, or you can get an underground plot of land in Undermine. Then in this house, you'll be able to highlight all the things you have done over the years. You can have your tanks mostly be there.
I think showing off achievements has to be one of the features. I would love that. You know, being able to show off things that you've done. Maybe you got the reigns of invincible. There's something to show off because of that. You got your legendary. One day it's kind of hanging over the fireplace. You don't use it anymore, but it's sitting up there, Fearloth, just heating up the room in the winter. These kinds of things would be really cool to be able to show off. Maybe an AOTC achievement item that you could put in your house. Yeah, definitely a cool way to make player housing more interactive.
Will have all your characters actually living there. So imagine logging into your house and having your alts just going on about their lives, like actually living there, not just being random NPCs. Then of course,
that random tank all taking a shit upstairs.
The NPCs from the delves there as well. Now, of course, I am aware this wouldn't be everyone's cup of tea. Not everyone is crazy about player housing or really cares about their character having a house in a game, which is of course why this is not going to be like the main feature of the expansion. Midnight is obvious about the void, light invasion, all that crazy stuff. But this could be like a big feature that they could use as a selling point to get the old players back. You can imagine a lot of people that gave up on WoW might want to return to check out what player housing is about. Furthermore, to them, it is like a win-win scenario. They would update all these things regardless, but with them updating the city storylines, they're getting content, building new features at the same time. So really, as I said, it is win-win. So ultimately, it really seems like player housing could become a reality in the very near future. Thank you for watching. Check out where the line you really want to build by clicking on the screen, and check out my video on ancient Greek colonies in Spain by clicking on the screen as well. See you next time.
Player housing even makes sense, you know, for the fact that they've been creating all these new cities, but also making them cross-faction. That's another interesting thought, that you could have Horde and Alliance living in the same city together. You know, it irks me, but I think it's possible, and I think they're kind of heading that direction. One city that I would like to see, people have been commenting on what they would like, man. Undercity's fine, but I would still like to see a rebuilt Lordaeron. I do want them to do it. I would like to live in a rebuilt Lordaeron. You know, walk those streets, especially as a Death Knight, you know, as someone who kind of, you know, understand, maybe my tune fell during the invasion of Lordaeron and all this stuff. Man, it would be cool to walk those halls, walk that city, and live in that city. But great stuff from Doran. We'll have to see if it happens.